Ah, motor shows. Frustrating to attend, worse to film, and even more boring to watch. So frustrating. So let's change it up a little, shall we? Oh, that's better. Like the A35, we can spend a bit of time with this now. No one's going to miss it too long. So guys, today we're talking about the brand new GLE, and it is completely brand new. So it's not a facelift, it's not just been modified outside or inside, it is a whole new model compared to the previous car. But the previous car was a bit of an odd one because it didn't start life as a GLE, did it? It was actually first an ML or an M class. And that's how this section of mid-range MB SUVs started. It was the first car, the M class, that Mercedes did outside of the G Wagon. It was their first venture into the premium SUV market that they claim to have started, which is a contentious point by itself. But the M class was first introduced 1997. Who can forget Jurassic Park with that livery all over the car? And then that was their first excursion into this side of the market. That was matched by a similar response by their Bavarian rivals in BMW with the X5 of that time, and the rest is history. But then later on, the M class was renamed, as I said, in this previous generation to the GLE. And that follows the case of all the other cars in MB's SUV lineup. So we've got the GLA, which is on the A-Class platform, the GLC on the C-Class platform. And now this is meant to be more of an E-Class with technology from the E all up to the level of the E that you expect. So we're going to see a bit of that outside, and we're going to see a bit of that inside as well. So let's first have a look at the outside, the design of this car. So the first thing that hits you immediately, if we look at the previous car, it actually looks quite C-Class on the front, quite GLC. It hasn't got any distinctive features, in fact, anywhere on the car that would really denote it to be of GLE, i.e. the E-Class family. But if you look at the new one, it's immediately recognizable as an E-Class, especially just because of those lights in the front. They immediately scream to you that this is part of the E-Class family. So just comparing the design then, you can see how much more compared to the previous GLE. This is so much more aggressive on the front. I mean, it's literally, it feels like it's grown twice as large in terms of the mouth itself. And now the grille is completely new. It's much more like what Mercedes have done in their concepts for SUVs. It's an octagonal, very large grille. Almost seems like the AMG version was probably designed first in terms of this entire AMG line front end, because it's just so aggressive. You've got such big air intakes ready to have AMG bits. You've got a grille which is just huge here and intimidating. We've got, of course, bonnet bulges as well. It looks very, very sporty indeed. And you compare that then to the non-AMG line, it's still got all those cues of an MB SUV like you'd see in the X-Class or the GLE, those telltale signs at the bottom, under the front bumper, on the front grille, all of those bits that denote an MB SUV, even the plastic bits above the wheel arches here. But this new car, much more aggressive in the front. The car is obviously grown in size as well, so the wheelbase has increased by about 8 centimeters. So it's a longer car. Inside there's more space. We'll get onto that aspect later. Of course, you've got the aerodynamic slats on the front wing here, which you see on all new Mercedes Benz, which improve the airflow. Underneath the front bumper, you've got a lot of square shapes, which we've always had in MB SUVs, and you'll see this around the car everywhere. This car doesn't have running boards, it just has a normal AMG line style side sill. But what I really love on the side are those arches that you see, because on the previous GLE, it didn't have those arches, where there's a more protruding shape, a more aggressive shape around the arches. GLC doesn't have that either, but the new GLE has it, and it makes the side look so much more aggressive. I'd love to see what this looks like in a coupe. We'll check that out in a second. The wheels are a bit of an annoying point for me because they're the same as the ones on the 53s and the 43s and the 35. I thought those would be saved for the entry-level AMGs. They're not. It's very confusing, even for someone who knows the brand so well. Why are these wheels just been shoved on a normal AMG line? I don't get it. They look great, don't get me wrong. They're 22 inches, they're large, they look awesome, but why not just have unique wheels for the AMG line and leave the entry-level AMGs alone? I don't know. But the general look of the side, very aggressive, and I keep saying aggressive, it's not just that, it's kind of the bulk. The bulk of the car sits in the lower half, and thus the greenhouse area looks a bit smaller because you've got bigger shoulders. So the car just looks, I don't know, more muscular to me. And generally, I don't like these standard estate versions. I think the previous GLE was boring, really boring. I prefer the X5. But this has got some real presence to it, even in estate form. Where I'd normally take the coupe, I would consider this over it. But the rear has got the bits that I love the most, and one bit that I hate the most as well. So the bits that I love, again, it's that muscular proportion, but it's really the lights. So these are like short and smaller versions of the old GLE lights, but a lot more like the current CLS and A-Class with the very 3D shaped light design inside. They look absolutely gorgeous in person and in pictures. They look as good as you think they would. I quite like the diffuser as well with the little SUV elements in Mercedes design, but even though I love the look of the exhaust, unfortunately, if we get close up, they're completely fake and they've just got a wall of plastic behind them. I don't get why manufacturers do this. I was really disappointed to see that, because if you look at the new X5, in the same level of engine, it doesn't do it. It's got actual real exhaust in the back. Why this does, I just don't know. Still got the air ducts on the rear bumpers. The whole effect is really quite aggressive. Just a shame about those exhausts. So let's talk a bit about the tech of this car, because when I heard about the GLE, as most of us would expect, I expected more E-Class-like interior, updated design outside, but for the normal cars, still the same old roly-poly boat-like ride. But boy, was I shocked when I read the specs of this car, because it doesn't seem to be the case. But obviously I'm going to wait for the main full road test before we come to that. But let's actually talk about what's in this. So the 6 and 8 cylinder versions of the new GLE run the 48 volt system that we saw in the E53 AMG entry-level car. And what that means is that this has got a lot of the tech that we see in those cars. So the first thing which is unique to the GLE is something called E-active suspension, which works on a 48 volt suspension. And it's very, very special because it features the first type of suspension that can control the spring and dampening forces individually at each wheel of the car. And you can do that within the MBUX system itself. And what that helps do is negate body roll and controls the pitch and squat of the car as well. So it's very clever. Then you pair that alongside something from the S-Class series of cars, which is road scanning technology, scanning the road ahead of you to judge how to work the suspension. It makes the car even more compliant, even more intelligent in terms of its suspension, but it doesn't end there. It's got something else that we all saw in action in my AMG S63 Coupe review, a car that I absolutely love for its handling. And that is the tilt curve system in that car, where the car sort of tilts in like a motorcycle when you're driving through corners. And it's going to transform the drive compared to the previous GLE. So I'm really quite excited to see what this is like. There's also a new 4MATIC system for the 6 and 8 cylinder cars, which is basically very similar to what we saw in the E53, where you have 100% variable from the front axle to the rear in terms of power distribution. So just like 4MATIC Plus you get in the AMGs. For the non-6 and 8 cylinder cars, you get the old 4MATIC system with the 50-50 split. Then let's talk about the engine, because this, as I said, is the 450 GLE, but it's very similar, in fact, to that E53 that we tried. So it's that same inline 6 turbo engine, and it is linked to a hybrid boost system. So this has got 367 brake horsepower, 500 Newton meters of torque, all probably sounding very similar to you from that review. And it's even got that EQ boost of 22 HP and 250 Newton meters when you need it. So I'd really like to see how is this, I mean, that sounds great as a 450 GLE, but how is the GLE 53 going to differentiate itself from that? Obviously, you'll have AMG components and whatnot and software, but it's going to have to work really hard because this 450 just seems really similar. Then the top dog, of course, you knew this was coming. I'm Mr. AMG, it had to. The GLE 63S. That's going to be the top dog. That's the one I'm really interested in, because just look at what it could potentially look like. And I can safely guess, I think, some specs. So E63 tune of the 4-litre V8 bi-turbo, what I call AMG's best engine. Probably sick of hearing that by now. So 612 brake horsepower, 900 odd Newton meters of torque. I think you'll have 4MATIC Plus in that car as well. So it'll have fully variable distribution of the power from the front to the rear. Will it get drift mode? I think it needs it to differentiate itself from the GLC. I think it really does need that. And of course, the design is going to be pretty awesome, but we'll have to see how AMG work with this new suspension setup with the 48-volt system. Will there be any EQ in there? I don't know. But of course, there'll also be a coupe version of this GLE, a new one, which could look absolutely awesome because of how much more aggressive the shoulders are on this car. And then, of course, you knew it was coming, GLE 63S Coupe. But for me, this is going to have to be a really good car because I personally think performance saloons and performance SUVs are better when they're smaller. So the GLC 63, that is the pick of the bunch for me at the moment. I think the GLE is going to have to work really hard to reduce that feeling of size and weight to get there. But maybe it will. Who knows? Let's see. It's an exciting time with Merc SUVs at the moment. But guys, now I think we better get back to the motor show before I get banned completely for pulling the stunt. Let's have a look at the interior because the tech is so key. All of what I just spoke about, you could forget about because the tech inside makes this new GLE what it is. Right guys, so if you remember when I said that the A-Class was the most advanced Mercedes-Benz, no more. Now the GLE is. It's got MBUX in it and it's taken it to a whole new level. Again, they keep on refining their software and it keeps getting better and better, and now the GLE by far the most powerful. But before I get onto that, let's address the design because of course this is a whole new model. It's not a facelift, it's a complete do-over of the GLE. So let's see what you get design-wise inside. So the first thing that hits you, of course, now you've got these massive 12-inch displays in the front here on each side, and they are a completely different experience to what you currently have in GLE. The current GLE is so far away in technology. These will help keep the car relevant in the future with software updates and whatnot. And they're the same as what you get in the S-Class and the E-Class. And of course, they are now run by an advanced version of MBUX, which we will go over shortly. Next thing you get is, of course, the new steering wheel out of the S-Class, etc., where we've got the touchpads controlling each side. We've covered this vigorously. This is the AMG line version. You also get the engine start-stop button, all the switches like the window switches, the doors, the light switches here, everything is brand new. Then you come and you take a look at the center console and we've got very much what we have as sort of Porsche Cayenne looking handlebars here. Of course, this is all denoting that off-road idea, which this car really focuses on. Mercedes is saying it's the most advanced and individual off-road vehicle. And we'll get onto why that is, apart from the stuff we've already discussed. You see the vents then, and these look quite old, but they do follow the E-Class tradition of having 4 here. Because the GLE, like we said on the design outside, is following more towards the E-Class, and it's shouting out, I'm part of the E-Class family now. This is part of that, the positioning anyway, but these vents are old style. I think the reason is that off-road off-road Mercedes vehicles rather, they seem to have more square shapes. If we look at the diffuser we saw earlier, the rear diffuser, that had the square bits. A lot of the cars' front diffusers when SUVs have square designs in them, so I think this is denoting like more off-road structure. Of course, you've got the trims here which flow around like the E-Class, so again, part of that family. We've also got air vents here on one side, but the other side is oddly blank, which just looks a bit weird. Then we've got new switches out of the A-Class here, so this is like a whole new section. We've got the new gear shifting stalk and the indicator stalk, which we said were flimsy in the previous car. They're back, still looking flimsy here. Your steering wheel controls are a much smaller switch now on the car. And then you've got all the off-road options on this side, so you've got your high-low, the suspension of the car, in terms of vehicle height, and then your normal suspension options, manual, etc. Of course, you've got the brilliant touchpad, which links to MBUX. Now, MBUX has gone a stage further, and the first thing you must understand, there is now a camera up here, kind of like you have on PlayStation Eye and Xbox, that's tracking what this person is doing and what that person is doing, and you can't trick it. So if I'm here and I'm looking at this and I go into, say, I'm going to give it a shortcut, I'll explain that in a minute. I go into the seats and I'm changing the options. It'll only change it for driver. I can't trick it into doing passenger, but if Jamie, you sat in here and you did it on your side, like we tried earlier, it will go to the passenger seat and edit like the heating balance or the massaging on the passenger seat. So it's constantly looking at who's doing what. Also, you'll see from the camera, when I point my finger towards the options, it's highlighting them without me touching the screen. So again, it's tracking my movements. I mentioned shortcuts. I gave you one V signal. Now, I could set that or any other hand signal I want, for example, to go home. So I could do this and say, it's been a long day, I want to go home, and the car will activate and send me home. So this is great. This is good use of motion gesture technology, whereas we're used to the BMW stuff where you're doing this like a madman, changing the volume of the car. Then of course we come onto the big screens, and now the designs have moved on. We've got loads of designs in here. Some have come out of the new C-Class, so my favorite one is progressive. You've also got sports design with so much you can change and customize on the screen, as with all the other cars. And you even get the understated one out of the A-Class, which I really like. And then you start to see that there's off-road specific stuff in here. So we've got, for example, you can see on the 4MATIC, which is 100% variable. Like I said, it's more like 4MATIC Plus. And you can see where the torque is going to each wheel. You can see the power and the EQ. We've got the angles of the car here. Then that links into when you go into the settings here, and you can actually individually change the suspension of each wheel. There's a free driving mode, which wiggles the car around to get out of sand or anything else it's trapped in. It's really advanced stuff. Of course, you've got your usual dynamic select stuff, but when you go into settings, then you also notice that the entire settings menu has changed, and it's a lot more easy to use than it was in the A-Class, and I think this is them refining it a little bit. Of course, this car has got ambient lighting, the 64 colors, and the multicolor as in the A-Class, so it's all linking together nicely in terms of everything. Then we've got Mercedes Me and apps, just like we had in the A-Class. We've got the themes, like you can set in the A-Class as well, but again, you've got gesture control and shortcuts that you can set up. Of course, we've still got the voice command, so, hey Mercedes.
How can I help you?
Tell me a joke.
Sorry, my engineers were Germans.
Which is brilliant. So it still does all that. Of course, it does much more useful stuff like take me to Heathrow Airport, and it'll do it immediately without any nonsense. So this is very powerful, and it's in now a much more luxurious car, further up the Mercedes Benz scale. An MB fan like me, this alone, all this software and tech in here is reason enough to upgrade. In the back, the car is a lot more spacious now that the wheelbase is longer. The second row is also fully directional and electrical. And for the first time ever in the GLE, you get a third row, just like in the X5, which is surely going to help sell this car. Unfortunately, none of the cars here had that option, so we'll have to wait to see how good it is. But as you can imagine, without that third row, you've got quite a spacious boot compared to previously. So guys, that is the new GLE. It's a hell of a car. We're hoping to go and drive this very soon as well. This is a little sneak peek for you to see all the new tech in here. I think this is an awesome car, and as usual, you know what I'm going to say, I can't wait to see what the AMG version is like. Sue me, I'm an AMG addict. So thank you so much for watching this, and we'll see you again soon.